Today we will finish building this beautiful monster. Stick around, put in a bit of sweat, go through some hair-pulling moments, and by the end of this video, you will practically own this trading robot. Last week, we built the core of the engine, the part that says when to trade. Price breaks the Bollinger Band, RSI is in overdrive, and we place the sell orders. But today, we build something far more important. We teach it when not to trade. We'll do it in two ways. Besides the RSI, we will have a higher time frame confluence. So just because the 5-minute chart wants to trade doesn't mean the higher time frame also agrees. And if the higher time frame disagrees, we teach the trading bot to sit on its hands and not jump into the market head first. And then on top we add a spike filter because sometimes the best trade is no trade at all. But here is the problem. If the EA skips a trade, how do we know why? Or if it takes a trade, how do we know what it saw? And if it closes a trade, how do we know what changed? And that's the issue. We don't. Not unless we teach it how to explain itself. And this is what we'll try to address. Having a lower time frame, the higher picture, what the higher time frame candles are doing without changing the chart, and then a dashboard for everything important in one glance. And the areas where the market is likely to react, because if I'm going to trust a trading robot with my money, I would like to see exactly what it's thinking. And while through the first video we have built the core engine which is running, but it doesn't talk to me. It doesn't explain things to me. And by the end of this video, it will. So let's take a look at exactly what we are going to build today. First, we will build a higher time frame confluence. So we don't take a trade just because the price has broken the Bollinger Band on the lower time frame. But we also look at the higher time frame and see if the price has broken the Bollinger Bands on the higher chart as well. And we also paint the higher time frame candles directly onto the current chart, so I don't have to keep switching between the two charts, which can be especially annoying if I'm running it on multiple symbols. Everything I need right here. Thirdly, we will put a spike filter in place. So if the market has suddenly reacted to some strong news, we don't end up sitting in front of an oncoming train. Remember, it's a reversal EA. And then we'll build an eye candy gradient across the chart, because if I am going to sit and look at a chart for a long period of time, it might as well look pretty. And finally, we'll build a command center. The important Fibonacci levels, performance statistics, risk information, and most importantly, drawdown controls. Because if the daily, weekly, or monthly drawdown limits are exceeded, we want to stop trading. So with no more shenanigans, let's get our laptops, make some coffee, and let's start building this thing. So let's start with the higher time frame confluence. So we go up to our input groups and we create a new group, which is the higher time frame confluence. And we're going to give the user the ability to either use or not use the higher time frame confluence. But in case if he chooses to, what's the Bollinger period for the higher time frame and lower time frame? We could have used these values, but here we're asking the user to provide a different input if they want to. So now that we have created this, we need to add a handle for Bollinger higher time frame as well, and two more variables where we're going to store the values of the higher time frame Bollinger upper and Bollinger lower. Then we go down to on initialization, and here after these three handles we're going to add the higher time frame Bollinger handle as well, which is going to be based on higher time frames, the variable that we already created here, providing it the higher time frame Bollinger period, standard deviation, and the applied price. Then we go to on tick, where we were copying the handle information into our indicator buffer. We're going to add these two as well, which is we're going to take handle Bollinger higher time frame upper and store it into indicator buffer at 0 index, as we're only getting one value, and then store that value from indicator buffer into higher time frame Bollinger upper. Then we're going to copy the number 2 line, which is the Bollinger Band lower from the handle Bollinger Band higher time frame, store it into indicator buffer, and then from indicator buffer we copy that value into higher time frame Bollinger lower. So now we have the higher time frame upper Bollinger Band and lower Bollinger Band values as well. So now we can modify our trade signal criteria, which is we add here that if not use the higher confluence, or the bid is lower than the higher Bollinger Band lower, which is if the user is not using the higher time frame, then you don't need to worry. But if he is using it, then in that case, bid needs to be lower than not only our lower time frame Bollinger Band, it also needs to be lower than our higher time frame Bollinger Band as well. We don't need this bracket here. And if I compile, let's see, yeah, it works. And then we do the same here as well, which is, and if the user is not using the HTF confluence, then it's fine. But if he is using it, then in that case, ask needs to be higher than the higher time frame Bollinger Upper as well. So not just the lower time frame Bollinger Upper, but also the higher time frame Bollinger Upper. Once again, we don't need this. So that's our buy signal and sell signal. Compile, and we don't have any errors. And now we can add one more filter, which is the spike filter. Because we don't want the price to suddenly spike outside of the Bollinger Band and we end up taking the trade. We want the price to gradually go there and stay there and then come back. So we're going to create a spike filter and we give the user the ability to use it or not use it. But in case if he uses it, then what defines the spike? And here we're again going to use the ATR. Once again, because ATR values will hold across multiple time frames and across multiple currency pairs. As default, I'm saying 0.5. So whatever is the ATR, if between two ticks, the price has moved suddenly more than half the ATR value, then in that case, we want to pause for how many seconds? That user can define as well. Then we go down to our global variables, and here we're going to create a double variable for previous tick bid, because we need to know what was the previous tick bid so that we can calculate if there is a spike. And in case there is a spike, then a date time variable on pause the trading until when. So these two variables, and then we go on to on tick, and here before sending the orders, we're going to check if there is a spike. So after the order positions total, we check for the spike, that if the user has selected the spike filter to be true, then in that case, if the previous tick bid is not equal to 0 and the math absolute of bid minus the previous tick is greater than the ATR value times whatever multiplier user has used. So if the difference is bigger than whatever is allowed, in that case, we set the spike pause until to whatever is the current time plus however many seconds the user has specified, and we set the previous tick bid to bid, which means the first time it's going to be 0 because we're defining the previous tick bid at the beginning as 0. But then once it has happened, then the previous bid is going to be equal to bid. You can put a bracket here and a bracket there just to make sure. So in case the user is using the spike, then on every tick, we also want to set the previous tick value to whatever is the bid value. And then we're going to check that if the time current is less than whatever the user has specified and has been calculated to be spike pause until, if it is still below that, meaning that time hasn't reached yet, then in that case, just simply return, meaning exit this function, do not run these codes below. In that way, we're going to avoid sending the orders. Compile, and so far okay. And now we're going to create a warning, because what can happen is that the user selects here, for example, 4 hours and here 1 hour. Then this is not the higher time frame. So we need to build some sort of a mechanism to warn the user that his selection here is invalid. So let's come back to meta editor and we go down to our helper functions. And here at the bottom, we're going to create the function, check the higher time frame warning. So if higher time frame is less than or equal to the time frame, meaning this is equal to or less than this, then in that case, we find the width and the height of the chart in pixel. We create an object by the name of higher time frame warning. We prop the corner to corner left upper and we anchor it to center of the screen. Then the distance from the x-axis is going to be whatever is the width of the screen divided by 2, and the height is going to be divided by 2 so that it's right in the middle. And then we say what the warning is, which is higher time frame is not higher than the current chart. The font size is 15, the font is Arial bold, and the color is color red. And if this condition is not true, meaning the user has corrected it, then in that case, just delete that HFT warning. So now we go back up to our on initialization function. And here, just before the return init succeeded, let's call this function, check the higher time frame, and we only want to check it on initialization, because in any case, if you will change the values, it will be initialized again. So if I compile now and we go back to MetaTrader, then as long as this is smaller than the higher time frame, we will have a normal functioning EA. But if I select it to be 4 hours, now the lower time frame is actually higher than the higher time frame. In that case, we're going to get this huge warning right in the middle that the higher time frame is not higher than the current chart. So that's our validation for the higher time frame. And now we're going to start building the visual stuff. So I'll go down to the bottom and we're going to start with reversal lines. We're going to send to this function the name, the upper level, the lower level, the start, the end, and the label on right equals false. And we're going to start by finding that object, because once we have created it, we don't want to recreate, we only want to move it. So whatever name we are sending plus the underscore upper. If object find is less than 0, meaning this doesn't exist, then in that case we create that object by the name plus upper, and it's a trend line. We're going to send it the start level, the upper level, the end level, and the upper level. And we're going to color it red. The width of the object is going to be 5, and it's not going to be an array, meaning it's not going to go to the end of the chart. It will start and end at the start and end levels. But if the object already exists, then in that case, we're going to move that object to start and upper level and end at upper level. So if it's not there, then create it. And if it's already there, then move it to whatever we are specifying by sending the values to this function. Then we're going to do exactly the same for the lower. So try to find it. And if you cannot find it, then in that case, create it. But if you are able to find it, then just move it to whatever we are sending as upper level, lower level, start and end time. So that's our draw the reversal lines function. And after writing the function, let's go back to our on tick. And here, after sending the order, let's put it here as a visual test, whether or not, if it is not a backtest of visual, meaning if it's not a visual backtest, the function that we created, then the lower time frame start is going to be the current candle time plus 5, and the end is going to be current candle plus period second times 5. So start from the current candle 5 to the left and 5 to the right. And then we're going to call that function, draw the reversal lines, sending it the name, which is LTF, lower time frame. And then we're going to send it the value of Bollinger upper, Bollinger lower, the start that we have just created, and the end that we have just created. If I compile now, everything is fine. And if I run it, then here we see that our upper and lower Bollinger bands are being printed as lines, because at one point we're going to get rid of all the indicators from the chart, and then only these two lines are going to be visible. Now we have the entire strategy coded. We have the filters like a spread, and we also have the high time frame filter. But on the chart itself, your E is going to be applied to the lower time frame. And in order to see the higher time frame Bollinger Band, you have to not only open that chart, but also switch between the two. But what if we could, like this, put the higher time frame candles, the last 3, and the higher time frame bars on the current chart as well. So in one place on one chart, you can see both the lower time frame and also the higher time frame confluence. So this is what we're going to write next. So let's go back to our input section. And here we're going to create one more section. Let's call it higher time frame visual settings. And here we're going to have 3 variables. One is to show Fibonacci true or false, because when I was building this EA, I also looked at Fibonacci and thought of using the Fibonacci as a confluence as well. So I built it into the EA, but I didn't actually use it because it looks pretty, so I left it there. So now the user has the ability to either select true or false, whether or not he wants to see the Fibonacci on the chart. And then in order to see the Fibonacci, you need to define the highs and the lows. So how many candles to the right and the left of the highest point do you need in order for that to be a valid high or a valid low? We're not going to use the Fibonacci in this EA, or at least not today. Maybe we'll extend some features with Fibonacci in the same EA later on. But it might be a good practice to see how Fibonacci's can be built and how highs and lows are identified. But then this is the higher time frame gap multipliers. So we're going to build these 3 candles where there needs to be slight gap between the current chart and these 3 candles on the right. So this is where this multiplier comes in. So the user can increase the value to move the candles more to the right or decrease the number to move it back to the left. So these are our inputs that we require from the user for the visual settings. And now we will go down to the bottom where we had our section for the visuals. And this is where we're going to start writing this function, and we're going to call it draw higher time frame bars. Now a bar is nothing more than a box and a wick and a line going through it. So like before, we're going to check if there is already an object by the name body plus name on the chart. So if the bar is already there, then we don't need to create it. We just need to update it. But if it is not found, then in that case, create the object with a body underscore plus whatever name we're going to send to it. And we're going to send to it the start, close, end, and open time here. The object fill is true, meaning like the entire candle should be filled. Otherwise, if the object already exists, then we start working on the object itself, which is, it has a box. So it has two sides where the candle starts, where the candle ends, where the candle starts at the bottom, and where the candle stops at the top. These 4 lines we're going to have to define. And we're going to be sending these values to the function. So we're just going to use them here. And then we close this else. And then we use the object color property to color an object back to true. Then we're going to create a mid-time date-time variable because we need to create the wick. So it's going to be in the middle. So mid-time is going to be equal to start plus end minus start divided by 2. This is how we get the middle point of the bar that we have just created or updated above. Then we're going to look for if there is a wick already, and if not, so it returns the object find returns less than 0, meaning it couldn't find the object. Then in that case, create this line, which is an object trend line. These are the 4 parameters of where it's going to start on time. So which place, which is going to be the mid time because it's going to be in between the candles. So this point and this point is going to be the midpoint. That's what we're defining here and here. And we need to pass on where it starts and where it ends. So the high and the low values. And then the width is 2. We don't want it to be too thick. If you assign it 5, then it's going to be a thicker wick, but 2 is fine. And object property ray equals false, so it doesn't continue either upwards or downwards. But if you're able to find the object, then in that case, we update the time, price, time 1 and price 1. So once again, top, bottom, so these are 2 prices, 0 and 1. And time, actually in this case is going to be the same because it's the mid time. Both of them are mid time, but in order to be consistent with the way that we did it here as a start and end, we're going to go mid time and mid time. And it's only the high and the low which we're sending. And then once again, just like here, we set the color and the object property, send it to back true. So that's our function for actually drawing the HFT bar. Now we need to call this function. So we're going to create a function by the name of draw higher time frames. So first thing first, even though we have done this check in the beginning as well in the on initialization, but if the current period of the chart is greater than the higher time frame, then it just makes no sense. So return, you cannot draw anything. But if not, then we're going to continue with creating 4 variables. These are all array variables and they can have 3 values in them. And this is why low 3. So it can store 3 different values. And then we're going to just copy high, copy low, copy close, and copy open. These are generic MQL functions. So for the higher time frame on the current symbol is starting at the current candle, so 0, and how many candles? 3. So copy the highs and copy this value into this high. All 3 candles that we are getting the highs for are going to be stored here in index 0, 1, and 2. Same way we copy the low, copy the close, and copy the open. So now we have the historical 3 candles data for the higher time frame. So we go ahead and we create a date time variable current time and get the current time for the current candle. Then the candle width is going to be period seconds of the period current, whatever the chart value is, times 2. This is going to be the width. Then spacing is going to be 1. So period seconds. Period seconds basically mean, let's say if you're on a 5-minute chart, then how many seconds are there in 5 minutes? And then the initial gap is going to be period seconds of the period current multiplied by that HFT get gap multiplier, the variable that we created in the input section, which was how far from the current chart to show it. And then we're just going to loop 3 times. So starting at 0, as long as it's less than 3, I++. So 0, 1, and 2. Repeat it 3 times. And the date time, the box's start is equal to current time plus the initial gap plus the candle width plus spacing times whatever is the number of the index. So that's where it's going to go as the start. And then the box end is box start plus whatever the candle width that we have chosen. So start is this here, the start of the candle, and the end is here, which is 1 candle width away. So box start and box end, and the box color is going to be, if the close of the candle is bigger than the open of the candle, then in that case it's going to be green, otherwise it's going to be red. Bullish and bearish candles. And then we can call the draw HFT bar, this function that we have created, sending to it the name, which is HFT underscore, plus integer to string the number of index, then the box start point, which is going to be the start, the box end point, which is going to be the end, the close, the open, the low, the high, and the color, which is going to be coming from either color red or color green. So these are the values we're passing on to this function here. And once we have passed on the values and called this function, it's going to draw it. And then we just simply go chart redraw, basically refresh the entire chart. So now that we have created this function, it's time to call it. We're going to go to the top of the visual elements and let's create a section for updating all of the visuals in one place. So first thing first, we're going to check if it is a visual test. So if it's not a visual test by the function that we created for optimization and non-visual backtest, in which case we don't want to update any of the visuals. But if it is a visual test, then we call this function draw higher time frame data. This function, which is going to call the draw HFT function, which is going to run this. And then we should be able to see the 3 candles. So we close the if. And I'm putting some space here because there are going to be other visuals which are going to come here as well. So if I compile now, I don't have any errors. But now we need to call this function from somewhere as well. So we go back up to our onTick function. And then after all of this is said and done, here we're going to create a section by saying if it's not a new bar, then just simply return. Meaning when you're coming here on tick, you come down all the way here, and then here we're going to check if it's a new bar. And if it's not a new bar, we're going to exit the function. We're not going to do all of this stuff. So all of this stuff is only going to be done on a new candle. And this is where we separate out 2 sections within the on tick. Everything above this is going to be run on every tick, but everything below here is going to be done only in case of a new bar. And here we're going to say if it's a visual test, then in that case, update the visuals. So if I compile now and run, then here we can see that the 3 candles, the last 3 candles from the higher time frame are actually being built here as well. This is the Bollinger Band here. For the lower time frame, we need to put the Bollinger Bands for the higher time frame on the chart as well. So this value and this value. So the 3 candles are being printed here. So we go back up where we had done the reversal lines for the lower time frame. After sending the LTF draw reversal lines, now within the visual test check, we can now say that the current time is equal to the current period, 0, then the candle width is 2, the spacing is 1, exactly the same way as we did before. The initial gap is equal to the higher time frame gap multiplier. Then the higher time frame start is current candle plus the initial gap, and higher time frame end is current period plus the initial gap plus the candle width plus the spacing times 3. And then we can draw the reversal lines, now sending higher time frame as the name, the higher time frame Bollinger upper, Bollinger lower, start and end as true. So this is basically we're calling the same function as for the lower time frame Bollinger upper and lower. Now we're calling it for the higher time frame as well. Compile, run, and now we can see this is the higher time frame. If I speed it up a little bit, then we can see here, for example, this is the higher time frame Bollinger Band upper and higher time frame Bollinger Band lower. If I look here, we can see that this is where it is. Let's run it a little bit more when it comes down closer to the price. So here the value of the upper, the lower and the candles. And if we look at the 5 minutes, we see that yes, the 3 candles, exactly the same way as here. And the Bollinger Bands are dashed. So this is the upper and this is the lower. So we are now getting the values of the higher time frame, the last 3 candles, and also the Bollinger Band upper and lower values as well. And now we go for this beautiful blue gradient look. Now these are all optional stuff. It just makes the EA beautiful. So if you want to skip any of them, you can skip them. But I like to see the gradients in the chart because I've shown the gradient in the revert to mean EA and also in the ICT FVG EA. So probably makes sense for me to show how these gradients are built. So this is how the gradient is going to be built. So we go back to the top to our global variables. And here we're going to have a section for visual variables. And here we're going to create 3 variables. First one is the name of the gradient, start, which is black. So it's going to start with black and it's going to end up with the gradient that the user is going to choose. Up here, color blue, color blue. Then how many lines am I going to divide the chart in? I mean, I'm starting with 40. If you want a more smoother, then go 80, but that's going to slow down the years. So 40 is a decent number. And we're also going to have a spread indicator on the chart as well by the name spread. So let's create it and let's call it spread. Then we go back down to our visual part of the EA, visual elements. And here, maybe at the bottom, we're going to create the function, calculate the gradient color. And this is all colors defined in MQL language. You don't need to memorize them. Where basically what we're doing is we're setting up the R, G, and B values of the color. And this blends between 2 colors. It splits each color into red, green, and blue. And for whichever strip that we are on, it nudges each part a fraction of the way from the last start color to the end color. You don't need the entire bit shifting by heart. But that's just how MetaTrader packs a color into a number. If this looks very complicated to you, just understand this part. A color on a screen is just 3 numbers, how much red, green, and blue to mix together. So this function takes 2 colors, splits each into those 3 numbers, then blends smoothly between them based on where you are in the gradient. And then it packs the 3 blended numbers back into a single color value and returns it. Now the longer version is we start with the function. We're going to send to it the color start, the color end, integer steps, and an integer step. And then MQL stores colors in this format. The blue is the highest byte, then green, and then red is the lowest byte. We extract each component using bit shifting and masking. So greater than 16 shifts the color bit 16 positions, right? Bringing blue into the lowest byte, and then and 0 FF, mask off everything except for the lowest byte. This greater than 8 does the same thing for green. And no shift is needed for red because it's already in the lowest byte. So we just mask it. Then the exact same process for the destination color. Now we have both colors broken down into 3 components. And then we create these 3 variables R, G, and B. And then for each one of these channels, we interpolate between the start and the end value depending on where we are in the gradient. The logic checks which direction the channel is moving. Is it getting bigger or smaller? And then calculates accordingly. So for example, for red, if the red is decreasing, so start is greater than end, then R equals to start R plus end R minus start R in bracket divided by steps times step. Steps tells us how far along are we, and the end R minus start R is the negative here, so the R is decreasing as the step increases. If the red is increasing, start is smaller than the end, then it's the same math but just written from the other direction to keep the subtraction positive and avoid integer math producing a negative intermediate value. So once we have all of that, we pack the 3 interpolated components back into an MQL5 format, shift the blue back up 16-bit, green up 8-bit, and red stays in the lowest byte. If you don't understand any of this, just copy paste. And now we can go ahead and create the actual padding rectangles. So if it is optimization, then we return, we don't do anything else. Then we get the total width of the chart and the height of the chart in pixels. Then we get the shift. So every time a new candle is going to open up, how much is the shift of the chart? And then we create 2 variables by chart width, total width minus the shift size, and then the line height which is the chart shift divided by the number of gradients of line plus 1. And then we're going to loop through all of the number of gradient lines. So user has defined 40, so we're going to do 40 loops of this. We're going to create a variable object name, and let's call it padding rectangle for index I, so whichever number of line it is on. Then the same thing here, if you're not able to find the object, then create this object as a rectangle label 000, the sub window, the time frame data 1 and price 1. Then we set the color band by using the calculate gradient color, which is going to return to us the value in the format that we need. And then we set the object. So if it is able to find the object, then we set all of the object properties, the x distance as 0, y distance I minus 1, because we are always going up, times the line height. The x size is equal to chart width, the y size is the line height plus 1. Object corner is corner left upper, the back is true. Color, the band color that we are getting from here by using the calculate gradient color, and the background color is the same. Fill is true, selectable is false because we don't want user to be able to select it, and object prop hidden equals true. And then we close the for loop and chart redraw. And now we're going to go ahead and create the spread indicator as well. So we're going to get the value of ask and bid. Then we create a variable text where we're going to say spread, and then we're going to pass to it the value of ask minus the bid, which is going to give us the spread in points, and then at the end pips with 1 decimal. And then we create a text price, which is bid minus the 10 points, because we want the spread indicator to be slightly below. So where are we going to print it? And then if object find spread indicator is less than 0, meaning if you're not able to find it, then create it, or an object text, font size of 10, and color white for the spread indicator. And then if you are able to find the object, then in that case move that object to the current candle time plus period seconds of the current period, so slightly to the right, and the text price, which is coming from here, and set the object text to text, which is this. So this is our spread indicator, and after this we go back up to our regular trading functions, and here before the helper function we're going to create one more function, which is on chart event. This is a generic MQL function, so anytime something happens on the chart, this event is triggered. And we're going to start by saying static date time, because we don't want to run it every time. So start date time as the last time we redraw the chart, setting it to 0. And then if the chart event change and the time current is greater than whenever you last redraw by n plus 0.3, so giving it a little bit of a space, so a little bit of margin. Then firstly, let's set the time of the last redraw to time current, so that the next time it comes, it has to wait another buffer period. Then chart set integer, chart shift true, and draw our padding rectangles that we have just created. Close the if function. Whenever the chart moves, it's going to draw the padding rectangles again, so that it continues to go with the chart and not just be left behind. And now we go back up to our onTick function where we had the is new bar. We updated the visuals, and just before the is new bar, because the spread is going to change on every tick, we say update the spread indicator as well. So this is going to happen on every tick. But on a second thought, we don't need to do this on optimization and non-visual test runs. So I would rather put it here, so that the spread filters are only updated in case we are in a visual test and visual test only. Good, let's compile, and everything seems fine. If I run it now, then we'll see that our spread filter is also there. We have our higher time frame candles, we have the higher time frame Bollinger Bands, we have the lower time frame Bollinger Bands, and now we have a spread indicator as well. And for our gradients, we have already created an on chart event, but that's only going to happen when you apply the EA on the chart and the chart event happens, then the draw paddings is going to happen. But we also want to do this on initialization as well. So I come back here on initialization, and after the handles we update. If it's a visual test, then in that case update all of the visuals and also draw the padding rectangles. So if I run it, and here our gradient is getting properly updated, but something is wrong because I'm seeing these lines which shouldn't be there. So let's go back, and we are gonna go back to our draw padding rectangles. And here after the object back equals true, we're gonna add one more line, which is the border type is border flat. So if I compile now and run the test, now our gradient looks very smooth and honestly speaking, very pretty as well. So this is how you develop the gradients on the chart. So we're almost there with the actual EA itself. Let's do some of the cleanups. So we'll go back up to our deinitialization, and here we're gonna add object delete all. So at the end or deinitialization of the EA, all the objects that we have created, we want to delete them all. Then the second thing I'm gonna do is on initialization, at the beginning, I want to hide all of the indicators. So I'm saying tester hide indicators. So in our visual test, the indicators are not going to show. And then two last things before we go to the optional Fibonacci and panel is we're going to go to our draw reversal lines. We created these objects, but we haven't labeled them. So I'm going to come down here exactly the same way as we were doing before. If you're not able to find the label, then create one. So with the name, object text, at the start and upper level, the values that we are sending here, upper level and start. So create that here. The text is going to be whatever is the name of the object plus upper. The color is red. Then we do the anchoring. The font is Arial and the font size. And if you're able to find it, we just move the object. And then the same for the lower, which is try to find the object lower level. But if you're not able to find, then create it. And this is going to be our lower level. We set the text to name plus lower, green, anchor it, font size, and then if you're able to find it, then we just move it to end or start. If I compile now and run a visual test, then here we see that we have a beautiful gradient. We have the Bollinger upper and Bollinger lower, but without the actual indicators on the chart, it's much clearer. We have the higher time frame candles, which are also being printed here. And for the higher time frame, the Bollinger Bands. So if the price now moves outside of the lower time frame Bollinger Band, while it also moves out of the higher time frame Bollinger Band, that's when we're going to take the trade. So we are doing a confluence between the two. Let's go back to Meta Editor. And here we're going to put a block on send order. So we can run the test fast, and once it comes to the send order, the EA will pause. And here the EA pauses because we are sending an order, and if I press the play button, then we can see that price has broken outside of the lower time frame upper, but also the higher time frame upper as well. So this is why we have now the sell stop, and if the price comes down and takes it, then we have the trade, and as soon as the trade is in profit, the trailing stop loss comes into action. TP is on the middle, but the TP is probably never going to be hit. It's probably always going to be the trailing stop loss that gets hit. In the same move, we can have multiple trades. Once again, the trailing stop loss got hit, and this is the full and functional EA. And now the only two parts which are currently missing are a panel here and the Fibonacci lines. If you're not interested in having the Fibonacci on your chart, then you can stop here, and if you don't want the panel, then you can stop here as well. This is a fully functional EA now. But for those who are interested in building up the Fibonacci and also getting the panel, then stick around and we build those next, optionals. So we are back in Meta Editor. Let's remove the block and let's go up to our global variables, and we're going to create variables for Fibonacci, which is going to be previous high time, previous low time, previous high, previous low, and Fibonacci color. So these are the variables that we're going to need for Fibonacci. And we already had in the inputs whether or not the user wants to see Fibonacci. And in case yes, then how do we identify the highs and lows? How many bars to use for fractals? So once we have defined the variable, let's go down to the bottom. And here we're going to create two functions. The first one is finding the high. which if you want the details, you can look into my scalping EA, where I define the high and the low in quite a lot of details. Here I'm going to run quickly. So we start with a variable highest high equals to 0. And then we're going to loop through 200 candles from the current candle, finding the high of whatever bar we are on. And then we say if I is greater than bars n and I highest of the bars n multiplied by 2 plus 1. So if you're saying 50 bars to the right, 50 bars to the left, then 101 bars, and right in the middle, the 51 bar is the highest bar. Then in that case, if the high that we have just found on this, if that is higher than the highest high from before, then in that case, we set the previous high time to the time of the current bar. And we also return that high because we're looking backwards from the current candle. So if that is the first valid high, that is the first valid high. But in case if you're not able to find, still store the value of this high that you found here in the highest high, so that every candle, when we are iterating, we are still able to see and check it versus the highest high value, so that we know that our highest high, when we find it, is actually above the highest high. I have a lot more detail of this in the scalping robot from where I'm borrowing this concept. So if you want, you can go check that out. And then find low is the exact opposite. We start with the lowest low as double max. So we start at the maximum price, and then we go 200 candles back, every candle checking the low of that candle, and then checking if that candle is right in the middle of 50 candles to the right, 50 candles to the left. And if it is, then we store the previous low time so that we can build the Fibonacci, and then we return the low back from this function. Otherwise, if that candle doesn't qualify, at least increase the lowest low by whichever one is lower. The current low, which we have found on this candle, versus whatever is the stored lowest low. And if you're not able to find anything, then just return -1, that you're not able to find anything. And now we can go ahead and draw the Fibonacci's, which is we're going to start with a date time variable current time, which is the current symbol time on the current candle. We have a string variable with the name Fibonacci in. And then we're going to use the same concept, find the object of Fibonacci name. And if you're not able to find, so it's less than 0, if you're not able to find it, then create it. Create what? Object Fibo, which is the MQL Fibonacci tool on the current chart. And then you have to define the time of the point and the price of the point, and the time of the point and the price of the point on the other end. So on the right side, previous high time and previous high, that's where the point is going to be, like here. And then previous low time and previous low, which is here. So you define these 2 points. So Fibonacci is going to be drawn between them. Object level color is going to be Fibo color, whatever the Fibo color we have defined. And the object ray is false, which means do not extend it all the way to the end of the chart. And then because Fibonacci chart always go from the previous point to the current point, this is why we're going to have to check if the previous high time is less than previous low time. Then the Fibonacci first point is going to be previous high time, previous high. And the second point, the later point, is going to be current time and the previous low point. Otherwise, which means the previous low time is bigger than the previous high time, meaning it happened later, in which case the point 1, index 0, is going to be the previous low time and previous low. And the second point is going to be current time and the previous high. If I compile now, everything is fine. Now we need to call this draw Fibonacci levels. So we go back to update visuals, and here we say if it is a visual test, then in that case, after drawing the higher time frame data, find the high, find the low, and then if the previous high is greater than 0 and the previous low is greater than 0, so we have valid points, and the user has selected the show Fibonacci to be true, then in that case, draw the Fibonacci levels. And now if we go back to our EA, go down to the bottom and select true for show Fibonacci levels on chart with 50 candles to the right, 50 candles to the left for the identification of highs and lows, and run it. Then we see here that between the low point and the high point, there is a Fibonacci levels being drawn. Now we have not used the Fibonacci in this EA so far, but I do have some concepts that I want to enhance this EA with, which will require Fibonacci. So this is why I built it, and probably I'm going to work with the Fibonacci and this EA in the future. So this is the inclusion of the Fibonacci, and the last thing that we are left with is building a panel here. So we go back to meta editor and we're going to go up to the top, and here where we included the trade.mqh file, we're also going to include the panel file as well. Now this can be different file name and you're going to have to update this, but here in my include folder I have this file by the name panel Wayward EA 30th of June, and this is what we are including here. Now this file is the same as the scalping EA prop firm panel, so I'm not going to explain it again. If you want to fully understand it, you can go and check it in the scalping EA. What I'm going to do here is basically scroll down so you can pause the video and type it yourself. So the first thing is you need to define the correct file path back to your MQ5 file, this one where you were writing all of the codes. So wherever that is stored, under the experts folder, mine is saved in YouTube, Wayward EA, and with the name Wayward EA with panel. So you're going to have to find the right path here for your MQ5 file so that these two can talk to each other. So the first 27 lines, you can pause them and write them. Then this, then here, then here, then this, which is just creating all of these objects. Again, creating more objects. All of the explanation of this is there in the scalping EA, and I went through quite a lot of details there. But once you write this panel, you can use it in any of the EAs by calling on this panel exactly the same way as we're going to call on this panel today. So these are the 255 lines. I'm going to close it now. And now we're going to call upon that panel. So we included that panel file. And from that panel file, we're using the cprop panel class, and we're assigning it to a variable by the name panel. Then we come down into our input group, and here as the last input group, we're going to create a prop firm rule setting, and this is prop firm rule setting because all of these can be used for prop firm challenges as well. So initial balance, if it's 0, then use the account balance, so it's disabled. Profit target being 0 is disabled. All of these max drawdown as 0 are disabled. If I compile, well, I'm stupid to compile it for now. We still haven't created all of these variables. So here under the visual variables, I'm going to create panel related variables, and these are all those variables. So we have the double initial balance, profit target, max drawdown for the day, for the week, for the month, for the total. Then beginning of day balance, beginning of week balance, beginning of month balance. Then percentages of drawdown for 1 day, 7 day, 30 day, and all time. Then profit percentages, 1 day, 7 day, 30 day, and all time. Then equity high for 1 day, for 7 day, for 30 day, and for all time. And then trading enabled equals true, and trading enabled com as blank. If I compile now, we still have one error, which is most likely the name of the file. Yes, it is the wrong name of the file, cannot find this file, which is because when I wrote this EA, that's where the file is still looking at. So this was the original file that I wrote. But now because we are building this file and the name here is Wayward EA with panel only, and then paste the correct file name. So Wayward EA with panel, that's the file we're working with today. So now this MQH file is looking at this file, and this file is looking back at the panel Wayward EA 30th of June 2026. So back to the MQH file, close it and save. And if I compile now, everything is fine. So now we have our panel related variables, all of them, and now we can start calling on the panel itself. But before we go there, we come down to on initialization because we're going to build some validation checks, because here what we have said is that 0 equals disabled. But how will the EA know that 0 equals disabled? So we need to tell the EA that 0 equals disabled. And that's what we're going to do here, that if the initial balance is 0, then initial balance becomes the account balance. Otherwise, the initial balance becomes whatever initial balance the user has put here. So if the user leaves it as 0, then use the account balance, and if the user puts a value to match his account balance, then in that case use that value. That's what we are doing here on this line. Then in case of profit target, if it is 0, then it's double max, meaning it's the maximum profit target, so practically disabled. Otherwise, it's profit target. Once again, so here, if the user does not put a value and leaves it as 0, then it's disabled. If the user says 10%, then that's the profit target. And this is what we're doing here. That if the profit target is 0, then in that case double max, meaning the max possible value, 1 trillion, whatever, is the max for the MQL, otherwise profit target. And same goes for the max drawdown for day, week, month and total, that in case the user has put a 0, then in that case the maximum value that MQL can think of, that's the value for the maximum drawdown. Otherwise, if the user has specified the value, then use that value. And then we're going to initialize the panel by calling panel on init, which is calling on this panel C class panel variable that we have created here. So we initialize the panel, and then we need 3 more things: beginning of the day balance, beginning of the week balance, and beginning of the month balance. And now we're going to go down to the panel related stuff, and we say panel related functions. And now we're going to start with a function which is update the initial balances. So we initialized on initialization with the account balance as the beginning balance for the day, week and the month. But now we need to continuously update them. So we start with creating a variable, static variable of MQL date time, previous check, so that we can store the value of the previous check time in it. Then we create an MQL date time variable now, so that we can use the .day, .month format. And then we store the value of the time current into the variable now. Then we say that if now day, the date of today, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, day of today is not equal to the previous check day, then in that case, the beginning of the date balance becomes the account balance, because we are refreshing the value of the account beginning of the day balance today. Equity high of 1 day also becomes the beginning of the day balance. And then the drawdown becomes 0, profit becomes 0 for today. So today's profit and today's drawdown becomes 0. So we're basically resetting everything at the start of the day. And the previous checks becomes now. So the next time the EA comes here, now.day equals the previous check day, and this is not run again. And then following the same logic, we're going to start with a static date time 7-day period, which is the start of the challenge. So that's where we will start counting the 7 days from. And then we're going to do exactly the same, which is if the time current is greater than the 7-day period. After we have updated the beginning of the week balance, exactly the same way as the beginning of the day balance, equity high for the 7-day, percentage set them to 0. Take the total number of seconds in 1 day and then multiply it with 7 and add it. So plus equals means add. So add 7 days to the 7-day period. So the next time when the EA comes back here, until 7 days have passed, this condition is not going to be true. And then when it becomes true, that means 7 days have passed. So we're going to set the beginning of the week balance again. We're going to reset the equity high again, reset the percentages again to 0, and then again store 7 days worth of additional time as the buffer. We set the values of the 30-day period as well. So in the beginning, we're going to start with the start of the challenge. So whatever day the user sets, which doesn't need to be the start of the challenge, it can be the start whenever you're starting the EA. So the first time around, it's going to update the beginning of the month balance, reset the equity high, it's going to reset the drawdown and the profit percentages for the month, and then it will set in this variable the value it will add as total number of seconds in 30 days. So it will add that value. So the next time the EA comes here, this condition is only going to be true on the 31st day. So these codes are only going to run every 30 days. So this is our update the initial balance function. And then we're going to create a function to update the prop firm values. We'll start with equity as the account equity. And then we say if the beginning of the balance is not equal to 0, so the EA does have a beginning of the balance, then the profit 1 day percentage becomes whatever is the equity currently minus the beginning of the day balance. So if the equity has risen during the day or with a profitable trade, Then we change it into a percentage by dividing it with the beginning of the day balance, multiplying by 100, and the profit 1 day percentage becomes that. And if the equity is higher than the equity high 1 day, then in that case, equity high 1 day becomes the equity, so that we are updating this part of the panel as well. And then create a drawdown variable, DD, which is equity minus the equity high divided by the equity high ID. And then if the DD is less than the 1 day percentage, then in that case, we update the percentage drawdown for that day as well. We're going to repeat that process for the week. So we'll take the profit 7 days, which is going to be equity minus the beginning of the week balance divided by the beginning of the week balance to calculate the profitability of the last 7 days. And then if the equity is higher than the equity high of 7 days, then in that case, equity of the 7 days becomes equity. So we're updating constantly where the equity high is. Then again, creating a percentage for the equity minus the equity high divided by equity high 7 days. And then if the drawdown, so if the equity has been negative, so if the drawdown has been smaller than the drawdown previously recorded, then in that case, the drawdown for the 7 days becomes the drawdown. So we are updating the drawdown values as we go. So, and then the same thing for the month. And then finally, for the all time. And then we're going to create one more function, which is the trading allowed? Because what we have said here, if the user, for example, has set 10% maximum drawdown, as soon as the drawdown becomes more than 10%, the EA should stop trading. So this is what we're going to do here. At the end, create another function, and we're going to call it is trading allowed prop firm values. You can call it differently. I'm borrowing it from the scalping EA prop firm, so I'm calling it still the is trading allowed prop firm values. So if 1 day percentage becomes smaller than the negative of the max drawdown for the day that the user has defined, then in that case, return false. So now trading is not allowed. Similarly, for 7 day, if the percentage for a 7 day drawdown drops more than what is allowed, then return false. Same for the 30 day, all time. And in case of the profit, once the all time profit has been hit, because profit all time percentage is bigger than the profit target, then return false as well for the trading allowed prop firm. Otherwise, if none of this happens, then return true. And now we go back to our onTick function. And after the spike filter, we're going to add these conditions, which is we're going to find whether or not the trading is enabled by running the function is trading allowed prop firm values. And we're going to enhance sending the order, because if the trading is not allowed, then we need to not send the order by saying and trading enabled. So now we're checking 4 things, which is the order position total is 0. The trading signal is not equal to 0, so it's either a buy or a sell signal, that the trading time is within the range that the user is allowed, and that the trading is actually enabled. Then we send the order. And now we're going to add one more thing. If this turns out to be false, that the trading is not allowed, then in that case, we want to close all of the orders, the pending orders. The open positions will remain. And then we go down to our is new bar portion, update the initial balances on every new candle, and update the visuals if it is a visual backtest, and update the panel only in case of a visual run. If it's not a visual run, then don't change anything on the panel. We're not going to create it anyways, and no need to do anything with the visuals. And then we go to deinitialization, and on deinitialization, we want to destroy the panel so that the resources are freed up. And the next thing we're going to do is go to our chart event, and here at the top, we're going to add that panel.chart event. So trigger the chart event panel as well when the on chart event happens. Then we go back up to our global variables, and for the panel, we're going to add 2 more variables, which is the start of the day challenge, and we're going to create an MQL date time variable for the challenge start. So it's basically 2. One is a string and the other one is the MQL date time. And then in our initialization function, after the panel initialization, we're going to create this. So we're going to take the start of the challenge that the user has defined and put it into the challenge start in the MQL date time format. And then the start day of the challenge becomes enum to a string, enum day of the week, and challenge start day of the week. And this is how from this value that the user is going to select, here he can select this value, and we are now parsing this value to get only the day portion. We are only getting the day of the week portion and storing it into start of the day challenge, start day of the challenge. And then I notice that here I have copy pasted this function twice, so I'm going to delete one. And if I compile now, I do not have any errors. So this is it, but I've done a very quick review of the entire thing, and there are a couple of things that I would like to add. The first one is in the draw reversal lines, and here after these, I'm gonna add one more, which is the selectability of the object is false, and here as well, the selectability of the lower is also false. We don't want the user to be able to move the boxes by selecting them on the chart. So that's one. Now, if we don't trust the user to be able to provide all of the inputs properly, and we want to inform him, we can include some print statements. So in our initialization, we can also write it like if the initial balance equals to 0, then in that case, initial balance is equal to account balance, exactly the same, but also print that user has not defined an initial balance in settings using the account balance information, and then go ahead as else initial balance is equals to the initial balance that the user has provided. So I'm going to replace with that. Then the same thing here for the profit target, we can also define it as if the profit target is equals to 0, then the profit target becomes max double. So exactly the same way as we're saying here, but also print the line that user has not defined a profit target. So we are setting it to the unlimited target. Otherwise, profit target equals to the profit target. And then we can delete this line. Then the third one for the max day, if the max day is equals to 0, then we're setting it to double max. And then we also print that user has not defined a daily max drawdown, so unlimited drawdown is allowed, which is exactly the same thing. And then else, it is set to whatever the user has specified. So I can delete this line, and I'm going to do the same thing here with max drawdown of week and delete this line. And then here as well, we are replacing this line with a print including a print command in this as well. And then the total max drawdown and delete the previous version. So the only thing we have added is this print command. If the user has put zeros, then we at least let the user know that while there is unlimited drawdown, there is unlimited profit target. Compile and we are okay. And then in the same way, let's go down to the bottom where we had these conditions hit. We can also print so that the user knows that one of these conditions has been hit. So let's take the first one and we say the same condition. If that is hit, then just not return the false, but instead, if this condition is hit, then if the trading enabled com is not equal to printed, because we don't want to print it many times. So as long as it is blank, then in that case, trading enabled com becomes trading disabled, max drawdown for the day has been exceeded. Print that text that we have just put and change the trading enabled com to print it. So the next time the EA comes, this is already printed, so it doesn't print it again, and then return false. So we're enhancing this logic. Then in the same fashion, we enhance this as well. So if this condition hits, before we only had just return false, but now we have that if the trading enabled com is not equal to printed, then in that case set it to trading disabled because the max drawdown for the week has been exceeded, print it, and then set it to printed so that it doesn't run again. Then the third condition for the 30 days percentage, once again we do exactly the same, remove this, and then if this condition hits and the trading enabled com is not printed, then make it this, print it, and then change it to printed so that it doesn't print again. And same here for all time high, and we can remove this line. And then the same here for profit target hit as well. That if the profit target has been hit, don't just return the false. First, if the trading enabled com is not printed, then set it to hooray target achieved, print it, and then set it to printed so that it doesn't run again. And we can remove the initial line. So all of these are going to be printed once the daily or the 7-day or the 30-day or the all-time max drawdown allowed by the user has been hit, the trading will be disabled, there will be a print, and if the profit target hits, then also the trading will be disabled and there will be a print. But now, because we are printing it and we're setting it to printed, at some point in time we have to set it back again to not printed or a blank one, and that this becomes accessible again. So we go back to our onTick function, and here after the trading enabled is trading allowed prop firm values, we have run that function. We do if the trading is enabled and the trading enabled com is not equal to blank, meaning it is still carrying either a message or printed, then in that case print that trading is enabled again and set it to blank, so that next time if any of these condition is hit, the trading enabled com is blank and not printed, so that these can be printed again. So this is the whole thing. We started with a blank file and now we have a fully functioning EA. Now some honesty time. This is a mean reversion EA. So when the markets are ranging, this EA is going to perform better than when the markets are going unidirectionally in one direction. So in cases of strong market momentums, like when there is a geopolitical situation like these days, when there is COVID, when there is energy crisis, and when there is a big news coming up, those are not the best of times to run this EA. Because if the market is going only in one direction and we are betting on it to reverse back, obviously our entries are going to be run over by. So it's not going to print money every day. There will be stagnation periods, and that's normal. Don't judge it over a few days, judge it over a few months. The other thing is, it's a scalping bot. Our trades runs for a very small period of time with aggressive trailing. So you need extremely tight spreads. I haven't demoed it. I haven't put it in a real account. So I do not know from experience how this is going to work in the real market. So if you find this EA interesting, write it yourself. I will make it available in the store as well for those who want to use it as a download for reference or for learning from it, or are making too many mistakes and want to correct with a reference file. But test thoroughly. Do not believe every tick. Do not believe every real tick. None of those ticks are going to behave as the actual market behaves. The only test is putting it in a demo account, running it, refining it, and then seeing if what you like and what you don't like. So until next time guys, stay safe and trade safe.